So there are 6 common ways into NASA. I found these out after doing some research and talking to some NASA interns and professionals. So I'm going to walk you through each of them in this video. If you don't know who I am, my name is Sydney Chukwuka Madueke. I built the Aerospace Resume Bank and I build rockets. So in this video, I'll explain each of the 6. I'll touch a bit on each one. You probably already know some of them, but I doubt you know just how effective the last one is. So go ahead and skip there if you want. As for the rest of us, we'll hop into number 1. You'd probably think that the majority of NASA's workforce is directly employed by NASA, but that's actually not the case. Most of NASA's workforce, 2/3, are actually not directly employed by NASA. They're employed through contractors. So some of the big ones are Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Jacobs, California Institute of Technology, SpaceX, and Northrop Grumman. So those are all the big guys. So once you get into one of these contractors, you're going to try to make yourself visible to NASA managers if you're working on a NASA related project. Try to get one of those. And you want to absorb as much as you can, build a solid reputation. So if you get into any one of these contractors and you want to work at NASA, pay attention, right? Your unfair advantage is that you have access to information that the general public does not. So use it. The second most common way is through a NASA internship. This is one of the ones that you probably already knew ahead of time. Well, obviously, if you get an internship at NASA, that'll increase your chances of actually getting a job at NASA. So some internships you can do are OSTEM internship. This is like the general, internship that most NASA applicants do. NASA takes in about 2,000 OSTEM applicants every year, so that's pretty big. The other one are the Space internship. Now, the space internship isn't really an internship. I think they describe it as a workforce development program, right? So it's not really an internship, but you it's semantics, I feel, honestly, right? So they're you're gonna learn a lot about, how NASA actually functions as an agency. You're gonna learn more about the space industry, and they're gonna teach you skills. So I mean, like, how's that not an internship? I don't know, but workforce development program officially. Okay, and then there's also the JPL internship, which is its own thing. The application cycle. Usually for most of them, you go through the USA jobs. I think you still do for JPL, but just the application process for JPL is a little bit different. Right, so just keep that in mind. It's really competitive to get a job at NASA, an internship at NASA. So the most important thing is to know that don't just apply once. You can apply 15 times, okay, per semester. And there are 3 semesters, right? There's the spring semester, the fall semester, and the summer semester, right? So there are 3 times you can apply. Each time you want to apply 15 times. That's the way you can best increase your chances of getting in. And also, you can do multiple NASA internships. So if you get one, you can definitely come again and do another round, maybe at a different location. But another important thing is that you can't use AI on your application. I don't know if they have some way to detect it, but they have specifically mentioned do not use AI. So I know we like to use it for everything, not this one. Once you get in, those contract roles that we mentioned, try to ask for a referral to them. Hey, can you introduce me to some Lockheed Martin guy? Introduce me to some guy at Boeing, whatever. Right. So once you get in, try to ask for those referrals. And of course, network, network, network. Man, this is the most important thing, especially in this job market. It's so cooked. And network's kind of a nasty word, but really just build relationships with people. Um, that's that. All right. Now, the third way in is the USA Jobs route. This is the main way in. Obviously, as you know, it's highly competitive. Lots of people want to work at NASA. It's consistently ranked as like one of the best places to work in the United States. Right. So lots of people want to work there. So you have to stand out. How do you stand out? You want to make sure that your resume is no longer than 2 pages. Right. Before, you could actually have it multiple pages long. That was a way you could differentiate yourself from other people. Just add more of your story. But now you have to condense that to only 2 pages maximum. Okay. So you can't do any more than that. So keep your resume on the 2 pages. You can apply in multiple centers. Okay, that's the other thing. A lot of people will just, oh, I really want to work at, the Johnson Space Center, or I really want to work at Langley. No, you have to apply to as multiple centers as possible, right? Hey, don't shoot yourself in the foot. Get your foot in the door, right? And then maybe you can be more selective later on. But the first step you want to do is get in. To get in, you just want to get in. You get there by applying to as many centers as possible. And then also, when you're submitting your resume, you want to make sure you're using the CAR method, which stands for challenge, action, result. And basically, it's just a way for NASA. It's kind of similar to the STAR method, if you're familiar. It's a way for you to structure your resume in such a way that it conveys a narrative story. So like, what was the challenge you were faced? What action did you take? And what was the result of it? It's pretty similar to STAR. So if you're familiar with that, you should be familiar. If you're not, I made a video talking a little bit more about it and giving some examples. So go give that a look. The fourth most common way is through academic partnerships. So NASA does tons and tons and tons of university partnerships. Just the nature of doing, science research, universities are a great way to get that done. So if you're a student, okay, this is your unfair advantage, right? You're already at the university, so try to look for, research positions, that your campus is already hosting with NASA, right? Go get those NASA research positions. That helps you get your foot in the door. And then again, you want to make yourself as visible as possible. Network with all the NASA people that you're working with. Just try to you know, take your work as seriously as possible. Try to make a good impression. Try to get those referrals so that you can either work at a contractor and then from the contractor get in, or maybe just get directly in. Right? Maybe they'll give you the inside scoop of a NASA position that's about to drop. Right? That's that route. All right. So if you do get an interview, make sure you do not call NASA a company. Okay. A lot of people make the mistake that, oh, NASA is a company. It's not a company. It's a government agency. Right. Um, we get that confused a bit. But because NASA is a government agency, if you're already in the military or you're in another branch of government and you're in a kind of similar or adjacent position, there's a high chance that you could actually transfer in to that role. Yeah, so how do you increase your chances of getting in? Basically, you just want to mention anything and everything that's related that you've done. So maybe that's research, maybe that's, actual project experience that you've done. Maybe that's flight hours. That's more important for astronaut route, but anything that has to just mention that might help you increase your chances of getting in. And then you want to make sure you're keeping a lookout for USA Jobs Merit promotion. That's something that's exclusively for people in the government or military. So look out for those positions and apply to those. No one else in the country can apply for that. Only people in the government or military. So really, that's your unfair advantage. Make sure you're exploiting that. Now, this is the big one. All right. If you want to work at NASA, you absolutely need to get a pathways internship. Why? I mean, if you get a pathways internship, you're basically already in NASA. That's how, broken this internship program is. Almost everyone that gets a pathways internship gets a job at NASA. Guaranteed. Not guaranteed, but basically everyone that gets a job at NASA, almost everyone that gets a pathways internship gets a job at NASA immediately afterwards. So that's why it's broken. You want to get this. So NASA selects these based on projected workforce needs so that, maybe on any given year, they might accept a little less, a little more. But, the big thing is if you get in, you're basically already in NASA. So what do you need to know about it? I made a whole separate video talking about it, so go check that out. So there are 3 sessions you can apply to: fall, spring, and summer, but the application window only opens twice a year. And get this, it only opens for 5 days, right? So you need to have everything that you need ready to go right away. And again, the sooner you apply, the better. And then when you do apply, you want to make sure you're researching the center because each of the centers has a different, specialties and needs. And they want, different types of engineers and applicants. So you want to make sure you're applying to the one that makes the most sense for you. But the most important thing for a pathways internship, for getting into the pathways internship, is knowing the 12 competencies, right? So the 12 competencies are a bunch of, 12 competencies that NASA ranks you on. Again, I talked about that in that video, but essentially, if you're familiar with LEED code, software engineering, the first step to getting any software engineering role is to pass the online assessment, right? You don't get past the online assessment, you don't move on. This is the NASA equivalent of that. It takes about 2 to 3 hours to complete, so pretty long, right? And they're going to score you across metrics like qualified, most qualified, and best qualified. But the only people that move on are the people that score best qualified across, the entire thing, right? Across all 12 competencies, you have to score as best qualified, right? And then only those people will get moved on, and then they'll have the resume looked at. So if you want to get the job, if you want to get the pathways internship, you have to know those 12 competencies, and ideally try to answer them towards in the way that NASA, likes. And then again, like everything else, you got to apply early, right? A lot of people want these roles, so the sooner you get in, the better. The Pathways internship is super cracked. It's the golden goose. If you get this one, like, you're in. So if you really know more about it, I made a video about it over here. Go check that one out, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.